Hello and welcome to Life with Francy podcast, a place where you will find all kinds of conversation like mental health, self-care, self-love, trauma, hobbies, and more. With this podcast, I want to create a community where we support one another to get to the next level in personal and business life. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Now, let's get the show started. On today's episode, I have the pleasure to talk to Jordan Ray, the host of Fierce Soul podcast. She is also a certified coach, a self-love mentor, and soul guide on a mission for women to love themselves fiercely and live soulfully, transform from toxic experience and trauma to reclaim their worth, authentic self-expression, and healthy relationship. It's perfect timing for me. So let's get this show started and welcome Jordan. So tell us, Jordan, what is life with you?
Well, I think you've just you've summed me up. In terms of, yes, self-love, absolutely, that's my passion, my joy, and my own work, as well as all the work I do with everybody else. So my journey, probably like so many other people, started as a teenager, not feeling worthy from school experiences and family experiences, looking for that worth in relationships, which of course were all inappropriate, ending up in a toxic relationship which turned abusive. And it was actually after my first healthy relationship, which I basically blew up. Yeah, what else do you do when you're in survival mode? You blow it up.
Yeah.
That I realized I had to start working on myself. And so over the years, from energy healing and therapy and coaching and everything, was healing myself. And then I'm also a qualified social worker, and I was working in mental health before we've had this lovely lockdown for the last 2 years. Unfortunately, that put me out. My health has been affected, and it's just given me the perfect opportunity to really be able to start talking about self-love with women in general. And yeah, that's life with me.
I love it. Yeah. Well, for me, I'm brand new to this self-love journey. I am 34 years old, but I have loved myself for 1 year.
Oh, I love your counting. That makes me so happy that you're counting.
Oh yeah, it was major for me because once again, coaching, therapy, all kinds of stuff. And she's like, Francie, you love writing letters. Have you ever wrote yourself a love letter? And I said, no, I have a lot of judgmental letters like, you should have done this, and I can't believe you, and you're such a this and that and everything else. But now loving myself, what do you mean? And when I wrote it, oh my gosh, to tears, because it took me so long to get there, and I just didn't understand why. Because I love everybody else. I can love a stranger at a grocery store. But not love myself. I didn't understand that, but now it's been a year and it's been pretty amazing.
Isn't that the crazy part? And you were saying about being 34. Mine started just before I was 30. My journey started and probably was in its early stages, like through my 30s. And as you said, it's like you can love all these people, and we all know the stuff about how we would we wouldn't talk to other people the way we talk to ourselves. But it's so much more than that. I mean, the mind chatter is such a massive thing, but we've got to start looking at our beliefs. We've got to start looking at all the other stuff we're carrying around, how we treat ourselves, how we look after ourselves. And, you know, we gift other people whenever it's like, you know, birthdays, Christmas, we'll gift other people these really nice gifts. And so often we're the last ones to gift to ourselves.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
And yet we're so deserving of it.
I know. Excuse me. I know. I don't know why is it so hard? But I think it's I don't know for you, but as a teenager, you know, you're starting to figure out, oh, I'm a grown up now. I'm not a kid. No, you're not. Sit your butt down. But I really wanted to be. So at 15, I moved out. I went to live with my biological father because it had to be better than what I was leaving. Boy, was I wrong. I love my family in Puerto Rico. They're the best. So then that caused some trauma. And then in my early 20s, I was going through the worst of the worst, and then got into a toxic relationship, but he was my hero because he was getting me out of a toxic relationship with my biological father. So then when he met me, I was unlovable. I was unworthy. um I was a waste of oxygen. Like, pretty much that's what I was going through life. My mom's love kept me alive, because if I would have done a decision that would have taken me out of this life, my mom would have gone with me. So I couldn't do that. So I had to stay strong for her, and I did, but I did not want it to be here and everything else. So then comes my 30s, I'm like, okay, well, now people say I'm a grown up, and I still don't feel like one. But I have to start acting like one because I threw away my 20s. My 20s are in the trash. My 30s, I'm like, okay, come on now, girl, get it together. So I hire a mentor, and because of my trauma, I'm still not able to speak it out loud. I will throw hints and codes for people to understand that it was a messed up situation, but I'm still not comfortable. But with her, I have been able to work through all of it, and, you know, be done a lot of healing in the past year, or almost 2 years now that I've been working with her. And so now that, even with all the on and off therapy, all the books, all the podcasts, I still feel stuck. So now I have turned into going to therapy, but to understand my brain. So I did a mental health evaluation to separate what is mental health illness and what is part of my trauma.
Yeah. And so much, I think what's really underestimated and is just starting to really come out now is that actually underneath pretty much all mental health diagnosis is trauma in some form or another. That if you peel it all back and you look back, that yes, it is the brain, but the brain has been changed for a reason. And underneath there is trauma, and that's the work that needs to be done.
Yeah. And it's not easy. I say now, I joke around, like, every time that I have a trigger, I'm like, yay, more work. I thought I was done with that, but I guess not. Let's do this. Because what else do you do?
I had that a couple of weeks ago. I did a weekend with the fabulous Colette Baron Reed, have to name check her, and she was, you know, asking us some questions, and we were deep diving into stuff, and I'm like, oh, so I haven't dealt with all my disappointment. So I've got to go back there.
It's a never-ending process. At some point, you just have to look at it, and it becomes funny, because you think that there's not a never ending. As long as we're alive, we're gonna be learning something. We're doing the inner work is what's help you to go through the other side and be like, oh, that's done. Hold up. Let me go and check what's that about. And in that process, love yourself even more, because depending on the trigger, let's say it's a really bad one and it has to do with trauma, then you're like, oh, hold up, stop the world. Let me take some time for myself to show myself some grace, some compassion, hug myself, do whatever you have to do to understand that you're loved, you're worthy, and it's okay. You're in a safe zone now.
You've just hit on such a huge part, and it's that stopping. I mean, as a teen, we were never taught how to manage our emotions. You know, there's the whole, certainly as a woman, anger is bad. You don't get angry. Boys don't cry, but even girls, you know, I remember my mum, the response when I cried was, what are you crying for? But it sounded like an accusation rather than a support, even if it wasn't intended that way. So we're never really taught to manage our emotions. And when there's trauma on top of that, and then the speed of the world, when you think about the fact we're now connected to people all the time between like our smartphones and everything, people expect those instant responses, which you never used to have when it was, you know, letters, and if you weren't at home, well, you couldn't take the phone call, and I'm showing my age. But now it's that instant response, instant gratification. And actually, we need to slow down. And certainly, like, that was the key thing that you said that I loved, was step back and take some time for you. That's because if you don't stop, you can't feel it. And unfortunately, the hardest bit is to heal, is the feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love this conversation so much. So tell us about your podcast. How did you started that?
Well, my podcast was truly accidental. um, it wasn't even on the bucket list. I had got into coaching. So as I pivoted to manage my own physical healing, I got into coaching, and I was thinking, oh, I'd love to do some Instagram chats with other people, help me get over my visibility. Obviously, I've been in a job where, although I'm visible to clients and all my work was face to face, outside of work, quite often we've had to be really careful about ourselves, and make ourselves safe. So there was a weird thing that I had to get through with my visibility, which was about literally being safe. And I was like, right, let's get on camera with someone else. It will help me and support me to get through. First Instagram live, and it wouldn't connect. Just would not connect to the other person. So we jumped on Zoom, we recorded it, posted it. I did that a couple of times, and then I went, I've got podcast recordings. Literally, it was like, hang on, I now have video for YouTube and podcast recordings. And that's exactly how it was. And I taught myself to edit, and how to do it all. It's you know, not perfect, but I don't claim to be an editor. But I wanted to, initially it was to share voices with my peers. So it was to have conversations about, you know, how people could be supported and how they could live. And then more recently, there's been another series within it that I called the Queendom Stories. And this is stories of inspirational women and their transformations. I can't call it anything else. And I really felt that it was important to share their voices and share the healing they've had to go through, whether this has been from a trauma perspective, whether it's been the first person that I interviewed actually had a stroke. It was an old colleague of mine. So we were talking about not just her physical recovery, but obviously having to accept this different version of herself. So yes, so I have these kind of two strands, this, how can you be supported in your life, and what experiences can I share with you? And then also, let's give a voice to those people that have gone through these situations and have transformed themselves, and let them share what they've learned. And hopefully that's also going to support other women.
Wow. Yeah, I love that because for most of us, we feel alone, you know?
Yeah.
So it's great that they have that community to support one another. And I love women supporting other women. I mean, that's my jam.
Exactly. And it's not that I want to exclude men or anyone who identifies as male. It is purely that I am a woman. I've lived my journey as a woman within these toxic relationships with that happen to be men, or particularly masculine energies. And therefore that's where, like you said, your jam, that's my jam. That's exactly where I
Yeah.
can get in, and I can support, and I can encourage, and I can empower. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I talk to men and women, but if I were ever to like get a coaching, I think I would go towards women because it's just like we understand each other, and we, it's your niche. So whatever your niche is, it's okay.
Exactly.
Oh, no, and I love all of this because, like, once again, this grown-up thing, like I call it, it's not easy. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a grown-up. It's like all the bills, all the responsibility, the trauma. Then you're talking about generational curses. Then you're talking about cultural trauma. I mean, I have a lot going on. That's just me. I'm not talking about the world. That's just me.
But this is all so underestimated. And I think as a Western white woman, and if I was going to, position myself into a class for purposes, I would probably be classed as middle class. I've had opportunities and I've had privilege, and I'm aware of that. But I think sometimes we also underestimate that there is generational trauma, that it might not be this societal story and history in the way that other cultures and lineages have their stories, but there is still stuff for us, particularly again as the woman in society, when we look back at our rights to vote. And don't get me on the rights to your body right now between America and the UK, but I do think we forget that, and that's a really important part to look at: the individual's history, the individual's culture, and the expectations that would have been on their lineage.
Yeah. I love it. I love to see it from example for me is my mom did great with alcohol. So I say my grandma had a reason to be an alcoholic. Like, she was okay to be an alcoholic. She was pregnant for 2 decades and she had an abusive husband. She had a right to be an alcoholic. So, but we lost her when she was like super young. I think she was in like her 50s because her liver did give out. You can't drink that much alcohol and your body not respond. Great lady. I don't remember her, but she raised 11 kids and she did amazing. They were spread here and there. We were very poor in Puerto Rico. So then comes my mom. She could have done that. And there was one time in her life that she grabbed the bottle and she just didn't want to be that example for me. So right then and there, boom, she cut the alcoholism out of our lineage from my family coming from mom and me as her daughter. So now I am self-aware of that generational curse, because there was some more, there was other siblings that didn't have that experience, and they chose alcoholism as well. Well, they didn't choose it. It was just that they had so many demons inside that they didn't want to deal with, that the bottle was a lot easier. They were a lot of fun too. But I say, even with the alcohol, like my uncles, I have major respect for them, because they were still fun and nothing scary and anything like that. So then comes to me, I am not a parent yet, but I hope to be one day. So what I'm doing is dealing with the mental health issues. Like, I'm a trigger for my mom, and I'm like, hey lady, this is not about you. This is about me and what I want to work on, because she has a treasure box that she puts all her trauma, all her things, and she throws it in the middle of the ocean. So it's a metaphor. And as her daughter, I bring it back. I'm like, hey lady, it's time to get that treasure box out, because I tell her, if my kids deal with anything from that treasure box, we're gonna have a problem. So she needs to deal with whatever is in there. But it and her time is different generations. So, but I want to be self-aware and work through it. So when I do become a mom, if I see something that was already in my family, that is being passed down, I can be like, oh no, little buddy, we're not gonna go there. We need to go and look for the tools and resources to help you have a better chance at life.
What a legacy to leave. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. I'm not a mum. That wasn't in, unfortunately, hasn't ended up in my journey at all.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a whole other bit of grieving and healing I never expected to have to do. But what it probably has allowed me to do was be a lot more available to the young people that I did work with. And that's not comparing myself to any of my fabulous colleagues, but I was never the one that then had to go home and switch over to my own kids. I had the space when I got home. So I could just be there, and I could probably take on a little bit more and all
Yeah.
of those things. But the biggest bit that I learned when I very first started with young people in mental health, so many of them that were being put forward for individual therapy didn't need individual therapy. It was the family work that was needed. And actually, even though they were going to have therapy, the system around them was still going to be the same. That
Yep.
wasn't changing. And not by all means, not all the families at all, but some of the parents were very much, fix my child.
Oh
This
yeah.
is my child's problem, fix my child. And you're looking at them going, okay, now how do I phrase this in a way of, if we fixed you?
Oh my gosh, I'm going through it right now with somebody that I know, that her child is a trigger. And I can't believe this and I can't believe that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, just look at yourself in the mirror, because I have done it to my mom. When my mom was staying with me, I was like, oh, how does it feel to look in the mirror? And my dad will be dying laughing because he understands. And my mom was like, I'm not like that. I don't act like that. Oh, really? So where did I learn it from? So anyways, but yeah, oh my God, I am so glad that you're saying that, because a lot of people don't understand. Like, if your kid is triggering you, it's probably because it's something that you haven't dealt with in the past, that is more about you than it is about your child.
Absolutely. And yes, of course, there are behavioral difficulties, and there are
Yes.
children that have been through trauma and therefore need more support. But it's still part of, if your child needs additional support, then that's also about learning a different way of parenting. And it's taking you through the process. This isn't to say that there's anything wrong with your child. It's just that they have extra needs. And therefore, as a parent, you also need to learn to be able to respond to those extra needs. And as you were talking about that treasure box, unfortunately, that means pulling your treasure box back in, taking the top off, looking at what's blocking you, looking at what's coming up for you when all of this is going on, and starting to dig. And that's the messy and painful bit, and that's the bit everyone slams the lid on, and like you said, either ignores it, avoids it, becomes a workaholic, drinks, hammers the gym for 20 hours a week, or whatever they're choosing to not feel.
For my mom, what I see is that she will be fine until she's not. And then it's like, because like right before the hurricane this year, she was like claiming like she's fine because she's like, oh, my generation, we didn't have nothing about bipolar. She's talking about my mental health diagnosis and this and that. I said, Mom, they had it. Nobody was volunteering for a mental health evaluation. That wasn't talk. It's still in my generation. It's still not talk like that. That's why I'm trying to bring it out here. Like, hey, I did a mental health evaluation. It was actually pretty cool. I learned a lot about my brain, and now I can treat my brain like my bestie. Like it's something outside of me that I'm like, oh, brain, you have gone through a lot. It sounds crazy, but like you have to do it, because if you look at it and it's just yourself, you're acting crazy, you're acting extreme, this and that, you should do this, you should do that. No, I shouldn't do anything. I went through hell and back at least 1,000,000 times. And I'm dealing with a lot because of the pressure of what I want my future to look like. And I'm not giving myself enough grace, accomplishment, or nothing. I'm just like going to the next thing without celebrating how far I have come. That's another thing that we deal with. That why don't we celebrate a kid does like their baby steps, and we're like, yay, that's awesome. For us, we actually accomplished something major, and we're like, okay, well, now we got to work on something else.
And we always wait till the end of whatever that big thing is to celebrate, and we never get there. You did remind me as a joke though, when you were talking about that, and I remember an adult going, when did it get to the point that somebody stopped going, yes, you went to the toilet? And it's that finding something to celebrate. It's all that self-love, isn't it? And as well as your brain, it's your inner child, because we still all have those inner children. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still part of us, and they still like to come out and play, and they still like to be nurtured, and it doesn't matter how grown up we are or think we're not. I'm 48 this year, and I still don't think I'm grown up.
Don't do it. I have customers. I'm a mail lady. I work for the post office, and I have customers, and let me tell you, the ones that get to their 80s and don't want to be a grown-up, they're the happiest.
No, I still like to play. It's still got to come out. But as part of that, it is going back to those things that we would do as children. And it's those days where we feel crappy. Wrap yourself up in a blanket, get the big hot chocolate, find the film. You would as a kid, you'd have your duvet and you'd have your day. And then the same as I've lost my train of thought for a second, it'll come back.
You're fine.
I was going to say, but it's the same as the celebrations as well. That's celebrating the small stuff. So, and especially when it's that working through, whether it's mental health, trauma, emotions, it doesn't matter what the label is. But the day you manage to do something differently because of the work you've been doing, celebrate it, because it is it's the same as the first baby step.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, it's going to look great when you get down that road, but you don't know how long the road is.
Yeah. 100%. So I love the conversation with you. So tell us more about your one-on-one coaching and what do you offer to help your clients?
So my one-on-one is, I have a one-on-one program and it's called Wounded Warrior Queen, because I believe every woman is sovereign. Every woman should be that queen. It's a blend of a program and a bespoke. So it's not like every week we will do this. It's phases that we will work through, but how they work through and how they blend depends on what the person brings. So we start on a stage where I talk about the 7 pillars. And this is what I found has underpinned everything I've done, and that actually all the women I work with need to know. So this is forgiveness, self-forgiveness, radical self-acceptance, gratitude, self-compassion, that inner child, play and nurture, and embodiment, actually getting into our body and out of our head. And I know I've missed one, but it's gone. So that's kind of the foundations. And then it's moving on to the belief work, identifying those beliefs we've been carrying around since childhood. Like I said, getting into the body and clearing those with the emotions. That's the messy part. That's the space holding. That's the bit that's, you need to make space for yourself, as you were talking about earlier, stepping back and going through that. But out the other side of that is the opportunity to then rewrite your story, rewrite that narrative, and your inner child is no longer the inner child that they were. Yes, they have these experiences, but now you've learned what gifts have come from them instead of the shadow and the trauma. And so now you build your life story around that and how you want it to become. And the final bit is always about integration. Before I leave any of my clients, it's we integrate this. It's not, I'm going to teach you and I'm going to leave you, because I don't know about you when you've done therapy and coaching and everything, but I've done, a few things where I get to the end and I'm like, oh, I've got all this information. And then, of course, that's when all the questions come up. That's when all the bumps come up, all the roadblocks come up, because now you're trying to learn a new way. And so you are back to the learning to walk again and falling on your ass. And you need someone just to remind you to get back up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like almost in tears of just thinking of rewriting your story, because I'm in the process of rewriting my story and being that like
you've given me goosebumps saying you're rewriting your story, because I just know how powerful that piece of work is.
And acting like I should have been all along, and it's overwhelming. It is a crazy journey that I'm on right now. And it's unbelievable because I have dealt with the trauma, I have done the work, and so thank you for what you do, because you're truly changing people's life.
Oh, thank you. And I know we're not working together, but it's
Yes.
also so amazing to hear you talk about the power of this work as an example of somebody who's actually doing it and saying, I'm on my 1-year self-love journey. And actually that's something I'm going to start doing with my clients. I'm borrowing that. They're all going to get like 1-year chips. And
I love that. Yes.
so I'm going to borrow that from you, and I'm going to start like getting, the 1-month chip and the 3-month chip, and then get their 1-year chip. And yes, and the power of that story work is just, I know when I did my own, like I really thought, I've done this, I've been there, I've done it a million times. but really going through and digging in and rewriting was just a whole other level, a whole level of power and authenticity that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
So,
100%. I love that. So this interview is going to be live in December. And I'm asking, so what is like your biggest accomplishment this year that you're most proud of?
I think I might have to sneak two in there, but they're linked.
You're fine.
To be honest, because my coaching was truly opened up and launched this year, it's the transformations, that I've seen and the feedback from my clients, getting those messages that literally make me cry. And I think that's definitely one of the messages that stands out. It was such a huge moment for receiving it, was one of my clients messaging me and saying, my fiance has got back the woman they met. And I was just like, whoa. And we weren't working on the relationship. That was not a focus of our work. We were focusing deeply on her. And even as I'm saying it now, I can feel the emotion coming up just thinking about it. And then alongside that, the podcast, just being able to share these voices, share these stories, share the work, and get this message out here. And like you said, that message of knowing you're not alone, I think is just so important.
It is. Well, thank you so much for your time. I had such a pleasure. And just with the conversation alone, you have taught me so much. So thank you for what you do and your mission. You're truly like one of a kind.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I have loved being here. This has been fantastic. I just could keep talking to you. So
I know.
thank you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for listening to another episode. I really hope that you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Until next time, hope you have a blessed day.